I'm Instructor Jason, one of the instructors at Krav Maga Self-Defense. Weapons are items for self-defense. You may think that you can carry certain weapons or items for your self-defense. You see this in countries like the USA and South America. But in New South Wales, our legislation is quite restrictive when it comes to knives and prohibited weapons in public places. So, before we start, I just want people to be aware, people watching this to be aware that the legislation that we will be talking about is specific for New South Wales. So other states or countries might have similar legislation, but please do research, do the research for your area, for your state or country. So there'll be three main acts in New South Wales that we'll talk about to cover this. And we will have, of course, the Crimes Act 1900, the Summary Offences Act, and Weapons Prohibition Act. All right, so we'll go through some legislation. Just bear with me, just a little bit boring. So Section 93IB of the Crimes Act, custody of knives in public places or schools. 1. A person must not have in the person's custody a knife in a public place or school. Maximum penalty, 40 penalty units or imprisonment for 4 years or both. 2. It is a defense to an offense under subsection 1 if the accused person proves the person had a reasonable excuse. We'll see that list of reasonable excuses in a bit. 3, these are the ones. A reasonable excuse includes the person having the knife in the person's custody. A, because it is reasonably necessary for, small numeral 1, the lawful pursuit of the person's occupation, education, or training, or the preparation or consumption of food or drink, or the participation in a lawful entertainment, recreation, or sport, or the exhibition of knives for retail or other trade purposes, or an organized exhibition by knife collectors, or the wearing of an official uniform, or genuine religious purposes. So, these are, so we'll give a little summary for this because this is quite important. These are the specified lawful reasons for you to have custody of a knife in a public place, right? When they say custody, it's on your person. You're not necessarily holding it. It's in your pocket or in your bag, but you have custody or control over that knife or blade. So person's occupation, education, or training. So, obvious example of this is a chef. If you're one of those really serious chefs in fancy restaurants, you always see on the shows, they have that roll-up bag with all their knives there, and they take their knives wherever they go, especially if you're working different restaurants, right? Or you're a student chef and all that. Preparation and consumption of food. So you can have a little fruit knife if you're going on a picnic, that type of thing. And lawful entertainment or recreation or sport. I can think of sport. You might, other martial arts like I'm forgetting the name for but there's traditional martial arts that deal with spears, swords, and all that. So they're not necessarily sharp, but they still appear as proper blades, knives, etc. Exhibition of knives for retail. So if you're, and also organized exhibition of knife collectors. So I know in Sydney, every first weekend of August, there is a knife show at, I'm forgetting where the location is, but there is a knife show at every first weekend of August. And so if you're a merchant and you're traveling, so all your knives for your shop or your display is in your car, which means you have custody over that knife and you're traveling through those knives and you're traveling through a public place, so, but you're on your way to that exhibition and for your retail purposes, so that's a lawful excuse, right? If you go to that knife show and you're a collector of sorts, and you buy some items there that you like, and you're on your way home, you have custody over those knives or those blades while you're in a public place or public transport, etc. On the way home, that's still a lawful excuse because you're going from there straight to home. If you go other places, then that's something else. But you have to, yeah. So that's in sort of transit, right? Um, Official uniform. I think what I can think of is, our military, our soldiers, when they have ceremonies, they have that saber that they draw, right? The ones who head the parades, and I think before, if the governor has some special appearance and it's a very formal ceremony, a very special ceremony, they'll wear some sort of military like uniform, and there'll be military escorts where they have the formal dress too, and they'll have that sword drawn, and that's what I noticed, right? Um, and religious purposes. So the Sikh community, they have the kirpan. That's called the kirpan. It's like a religious knife. Traditionally, I think it's more a sword, but they still carry that on their waists or sashes because of religious significance. But they're smaller knives, and they shouldn't be sharp. They're more ceremonial now, more for display, like religious part of their religion. So and also back to the legislation, right? So recently necessary for these excuses, and then because it is reasonably necessary during travel to or from or incidental to an activity referred to in paragraph A. So like what we mentioned, the traveling to and from with like your work, if you're a chef or you're coming from an exhibit or a retail, a display, and all those things. And C, in circumstances prescribed by the regulations. So there's other regulations there in the prohibited uh, Weapons Prohibition Act, but we need to worry less about that. So 93IC, using or carrying knives in public places or schools. A person must not use a knife or carry a knife that is visible if the use or carrying occurs in the presence of a person and in a public place or school, and in a way that is likely to cause a reasonable person to reasonably fear for the person's safety. Maximum penalty, 100 penalty units or imprisonment for 4 years or both. And number two, it is a defense to an offense under subsection 1 if the accused person proves a person had a reasonable excuse. So, yeah, you can't just walk around carrying a knife, right? We have one, yeah, we have a training knife here. You can't just walk around like this, um, or using it somehow. But the easy one I can see for usage is, let's say you're in a park picnic, you have the small fruit knife that you can use to prepare the fruit for your fruit platter for your picnic. Then you're using that in a public place in view of persons, and it's fine because it's reasonable, right? It's part of those um, lawful reasons to use it, and it's also it's not likely to reasonably cause reasonable fear for all the persons around you. Yeah, so you don't cause fear and alarm. Moving on to the Summary Offences Act, Section 11B, custody of offensive implement. 1. A person shall not, without reasonable excuse, proof of which lies on the person, have in his or her custody an offensive implement in a public place or school. Maximum penalty 50 penalty points or imprisonment for 2 years. If a person is convicted of an offense under this section, the court may, in addition to any penalty it may impose, make an order that the offensive implement be forfeited to the crown, and the implement is forfeited accordingly. In this section, offensive implement means A, anything made or adopted for use for causing injury to a person, or anything B, anything intended by the person having custody of the thing to be used to injure or menace a person or damage property. So the definition of offensive implement is very broad here because it can be anything and everything that you could use to cause injury or menace or intimidate someone. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a proper knife, but you have all these, let's say, a chair leg that can be a club. A very interesting one that I saw was a bike crank with that proper gears. That looks like a really mean weapon. So all these things that you can use as a weapon to intimidate or menace someone will be called can be an offensive implement. And please keep that in mind for our discussion later. So Section 11D, just a quick one: parents who allow children to carry knives. So basically, if you're a parent of a child who's below 18 and you sort of allow them or give your blessing to to carry a knife with them, you're the one who's going to receive the penalty, right? 11F, sales of knives to children. So, well, this is more for the merchants. You're not allowed to sell knife to children under age of 16 years old. Maximum penalty is 100 penalty points or imprisonment for 12 months or both. For the parents, that's 5 penalty units, more likely a fine. So, Weapons Prohibition Act, Section 7, offense of unauthorized possession or use of prohibited weapon. 1. A person must not possess or use a prohibited weapon unless a person is authorized to do so by a permit. Maximum penalty, imprisonment for 14 years. Without limiting the operation of subsection 1, a person who is the holder of a permit to possess or use a prohibited weapon is guilty of an offense under this section if the person possesses or uses a prohibited weapon for any purpose otherwise than in connection with the purpose established by the person as being the genuine reason for possessing or using the weapon, or B, contravenes any condition of the permit. So, yeah, this is more for merchants too. It's just that you get a permit to deal, distribute, something like that, or to possess, um, whatever you're allowed to do, and specifically only for the specific reason what you're permitted to or what the permit says. But this one we don't really need to dwell on much, but the ones mentioned in the Crimes Act and in the Summary Offenses Act, right, um, is the ones that really impact us. So, custody of an offensive implement and um, custody of knives in public areas and the use or carrying of knives in public places. So, um, if you look in the Schedule 1 of the Weapons Prohibition Act, so you can just, by the way, you can Google all these acts, you can find it. It'll come out on the search results, and you can see these acts. You can go through them, just jump straight to the sections that I mentioned earlier. But specific to the Weapons Prohibition Act, you can scroll down to near the bottom, or at the end of the act, there is a section called Schedule 1. I think the last section is Schedule 3, but so you can scroll all the way down to the back and move up a little bit till you see Schedule 1. And Schedule 1 of the Weapons Prohibition Act, it shows a list of all the prohibited weapons, and it is quite restrictive. So, brass knuckles, trench knives, zombie knives, they're all part of that list. I forgot a specific term, but those belt buckles that you can pull out of the belt buckle and it's sort of like a fist dagger, those hidden knives, not allowed either. Those canes that have a sword, the hidden sword, where you pull that top hook part of the cane and there's a sword, not permitted as well. So it's specified there in the Prohibited Weapons Act. And those flick knives, the knives that those daggers where you press a button, it just comes out or it springs out. Yeah, the butterfly knife, balisong, is not allowed as well. So there's a long list. Knuckle dusters. I don't know if I mentioned that already. There's a long list of these. Yeah. Oh, including all the different sprays, the self-defense sprays, the OC sprays, those capsicum sprays, pepper sprays, all those sprays, or any. There's even a part there. If you look into it, there's even a part there that covers all, that says any item that's specifically used to, like, aerosol type, that's specifically designed for self-defense. It cannot is a prohibited weapon in New South Wales. So yeah, this why we're talking about this is because yeah, we're talking self-defense. So there is a natural tendency for people to go, for my self-defense, I will carry this knife, right? Um, what's the common mistakes? Multi-tools, well, whatever your job is. So I used to do IT. I like multi-tools. It was very handy when I walked around work, because I needed the pliers, needed the blades to open boxes for the computers, laptops, all those things. But and I wasn't even aware of this years ago. This was like 2 decades ago. I wasn't even aware. I was just holding it on, wearing it on the holder of my belt and commuting through the train until someone told me. But looking back, um, even though I say I use it at work, but I'm not exactly a chef. And these Stanley knives and multi tools, you can just keep them in the office. You don't need to take them with you the whole time. Or your office should be supplying you with these materials for you to use that you just leave there. So it's not really a reasonable excuse to bring those multi-tool Swiss knives. Swiss other people, I don't know if they still do that now. They used to have Swiss Army knives as their keychains, and because it's handy. But technically, to 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 err on the side of caution, that is bringing a blade without a reasonable excuse. Um, all those things. So that's why we're discussing these things, because then people will tend to bring all these, use all these, have all these self-defense gadgets to feel confident out there that they have something they can use to defend themselves. But you might in turn get in trouble with the law. Now, and as we're showing you now with the legislation. So sometimes, let's say picnic, you have a small knife, you may have a reasonable excuse to have custody of the knife. But um, if you have tend to use it, right? Um, if you end up using it in a self-defense situation, and it happens to be not proportional to what the aggressor is doing to you, let's say if it ends up being like overboard, there is a chance you might face assault charges, or assault causing actual bodily harm, or worse, grievous bodily harm, or if you've really done deep cuts, malicious wounding, all those examples of stuff you could be charged with. Uh, because the self-defense, like what we talked about before, that section self-defense, if you go overboard, it doesn't apply anymore. So just to clarify as well, what we've been talking about, the difference between custody and carry. In custody of a knife, carrying a knife. So custody, it's on your person, in your pocket, in your bag, that type of thing, or on your belt, like you know how those Leathermans and all those multi-tools have a carrier for the belt. So that's custody of it. Carry is you're actually yeah, you're holding it, you're carrying it. So that shows, that causes some fear and alarm, because you're walking around in a public area holding holding a knife. um, should be common sense, but sometimes it's not so common. So offensive implements as well, like what we mentioned, has a broader definition. And some of these could be common weapons, common objects, I'm sorry, common objects rather, but once you use them, they become an offensive implement, right? Even a pen. Um, there's all those self-defense pens, tactical pens. Um, as a pen, it. You can't quote me on this. I don't know how authorities will react, but it's a pen. But once you start using a tactical pen and cause a lot of damage, then it starts to enter the realm of offensive implement, even some other common objects. So technically, by definition, right, even a rock, picking up a rock, using it to hurt someone, injure someone, is for that specific case or incident, that rock will become or considered will be considered as an offensive implement for the incident. So yeah, so I would have knocked all the smiles out of your faces because in short, I've told all of you you can't have all these self-defense toys in New South Wales. Pretty much. That's what we just talked about. But what can we do now? What can we do now in the self-defense aspect if we can't have these specific self-defense weapons, right? Um, things we can do, of course, across the board. What's always best is avoidance and awareness. So we always avoid trouble, avoid situations where we have to defend ourselves. And if you look at the timeline of things, that's the very end. So you would have made wrong decision after wrong decision, messed up after mess up after mess up, to end up in a situation where you actually have to fight, unless it's one of those exceptional things where you have no choice. Um, and so, being always aware, being able to avoid, um, that is the best, and we can always do that. Especially like for us civilians in our day to day, we don't live in a war zone. We don't live in such such in bad areas because we wouldn't move or live there in the first place. But still, right? Just awareness and avoidance. It's more achievable, um, generally speaking. And which reminds me, I'll do some more videos as well. We'll call it field work. I'll go out and try to video examples or simulate examples of what we can do. And then more defensive options and items used in defensive actions. So this goes back to our usual lessons for in our classes, common objects that can be used defensively. So for a shield type, a bag, right? You can use your bag if you have those gym bags or backpack. You can use that to defend yourself as a shield. For stick type common object for defending yourself. An umbrella. An umbrella could be there. Um, if uh, um, if you have a walking stick or a cane, not the one with the hidden blades, but just the proper ones, the regular ones that can be used to defend attacks. And you can also have small items that can be thrown for distraction and assist in getting away. So all coins that you're readily able, that you can dispose of. That doesn't really a few cents here, a handful of 10 cents, 5 cents, right? That it won't break the bank, literally. Then you can use that for distraction, and then once you are able to get away or de-escalate, or you've moved to a safe area, notify police as soon as possible. You can see from the penalty points and the imprisonment, 2 years, 4 years, these are serious offenses, treated seriously as well. So, and you don't want people, they've already, if in the scenario where it says that you've managed to de escalate or escape, they've already tried badness on you, try to do something, right? Or try to intimidate you, or that's already an offense in itself. So, it would be good to let the police know. They can track them down and get one more person causing all these badness in public. Uh, yeah, so that's pretty much it. I know it's a bit of a killjoy. We do love our toys. I have to admit, I do love the toys, but that's a reality for New South Wales. Very quite restrictive on the self defense weapons that we can have in our custody, right? So it's a knife, blade, um, offensive implement, offensive prohibited weapons too. So I think the legislation is so vast; it just covers everything: knife, blade. If it's not that, then it's an offensive implement. So you could have those blunt force things like knuckle dusters, spanning all the way to sprays, right? All those pepper sprays. And then if it doesn't cover that, there's yeah. So just to correct myself, those are the prohibited weapons. And then outside of that, if you're trying to be creative, that's still covered by offensive implements, especially when you use it. So part of self-defense for us is considering as well the post incident. So you arming yourself with these things, you got to consider the legal repercussions, right? And of course, a decision is up to you. There are others who would go, well, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And if you are ready to face consequences, that's your choice. But ultimately, there are other ways and more defensive ways how you can handle such situations and not needing to break these laws. So to learn more KMG self-defense techniques, train with us at Krav Maga selfdefense.com.au.